everyone, my name is Michaela.
My name is Eva.
We're from Make, and today we will be talking about how we use AI and make automations in our UXR processes.
But before we start, I would like to learn from you how many of you are talking to users and get feedback from them. Can you please raise your hand? Awesome.
Nice.
Okay, that's cool. So let's share with each other what is the most frustrating part of the research process. Please scan this QR code and vote on Menti. We would like to learn from you what are the frustrations, because I bet talking to users is exciting, but the process can be often really time-consuming and stressful. So please vote. Yeah, there is a lot of recruiting, incentive sending, coordination.
I see time consuming.
Yes. We were facing some of these challenges too. And we would like to share with you how we improved it. So can you please switch it back? Awesome. Okay, so let me share a little bit of background. Michaela is a UX researcher at Make, and I am a product designer. And we are non-technical people. We don't code. And Misha, she is the only researcher in the company. She is doing everything. She is talking to users, doing the research ops, recruiting. She has to cover needs of the many teams and departments. And there is no budget at this point to hire another person to do that. And so I, as a product designer, I started to help with research because there was just no one to help me with that, so I had to do it by myself. But at the same time, I had to focus on the design because that's my job. And often we felt really overwhelmed and with no time and stressed, and it was really painful. So we started to explore how we could use Make to improve this. And for those of you who don't know Make, Make is a no-code automation platform, and it lets us build as if we were developers, but without the need to know how to code. So we can connect the applications that we use in our day-to-day processes and make them communicate, and they transfer the data between each other. And we can also visualize the whole workflow and monitor it in real time. And so the goal of Make is to connect the tools that you use in your daily processes and automate the manual tasks.
Okay, so as UX professionals, we know how important it is to get into the shoes of our users, because we need to understand how they think about the things. And Eva and I, we apply the same approach when learning how to use automations and AI in our day-to-day work. And so based on our experience so far, we personally believe that new technologies will not replace UX professionals. But we also see that they are opening new possibilities to our discipline, and for sure, they are redefining our roles and our skills. And so for Eva and for me, we are non-technical people. Cracking the code is not as much about learning coding, but it's more about learning how to work with these new technologies. And so in the upcoming 25 minutes or so, we'd love to inspire you and share where tech saves our time so we can focus on what we love doing as UX professionals.
And this is the part of the research process that we would like to talk about today. And you can see on the diagram that many of the steps are already done by Make and automated. And this way we can save our time on boring tasks and focus on the fun part of the research. And we do all of that with the common tools. So there might be already tools in the market that do something similar, but we would like to share with you how we found our workaround with the tools which are available to most of the people. So we use G Suite, we use Slack and ChatGPT.
Okay, so I started working at Make 2 years ago. I was the first researcher, and I started to do research right away. And after some time, research became really popular among at Make, and many PMs and other stakeholders from all different departments and other colleagues, they were coming to me and asked me to run studies for them. And that was awesome. But this demand for research also created some problems for me because I was the only UX researcher. So people were catching me in the kitchen and saying me, hey, can you test this? Can you ask users about this? And it was really difficult for me to track these requests. It was difficult to plan because the studies started to overlap each other. It was difficult for me to prioritize what is actually the priority because everyone was telling, well, I need that really soon. This is my priority. And I was totally stressed out. So I had this problem, but I started to think about it. How about it's not a problem, it's just a use case that I need to automate. So I was thinking about this, like I switched my mindset and I was thinking about it in this way. I need to start tracking research requests from different departments, different people. I need to decide which one I will focus on, and I will start a kickoff meeting with PMs with a ready-to-go research plan. And so this use case, it's good for anyone who needs to track requests and prioritize and start the project with a ready-to-go documents. So what did I do? I broke this use case into baby steps and created 2 separate automations to gain more control over the requests. So the first automation that you can see here collects research requests with a lot of information from the stakeholders, which helps me to decide which request I will approve. And the second scenario, this one, helps to inform all involved stakeholders that the request has been approved and that we are ready to kick off the meeting, and they will also receive a research plan ahead of time that's ready for them. So this is a demo. This is how the process looks like. A stakeholder creates a request from our Confluence page via Google Form, where he or she shares important information. Yep, and what this automation helps me with is that when the form is submitted, the data, when I run the automation, transfers to a spreadsheet and is copied to a Google Drive to a research plan. Wait for it. Now. Okay, and when it is done, I get a notification in Slack. I open it up. I read the research plan with all the information, and if the request is feasible, I approve it. And once I approve it, the second scenario sends a Slack message to the stakeholder with a link to a study that contains the research plan. So this is the second scenario. And this is what the stakeholder sees. So once I approve it, they get this message with ready-to-go documentation. And so this automation saves a lot of time, and it streamlines all the communication at the beginning of the research process. Okay, so with an increasing demand for research from different stakeholders, Eva and I had to find users who fit the study. And it created another problems for us. So we didn't have, or we still don't have a dedicated research ops team. So we have to handle all the recruiting, all the incentives, and it's extremely time consuming. And again, I was thinking about this problem as about a use case. So I needed to save time when sending emails and incentives to hundreds of users and track who has received the invite or incentive. So I don't bother these people all over again. And this is very useful for anyone who sends emails to hundreds of users, customers, or different groups, and you don't have a dedicated tool or a team to do it for you. And so I created this scenario. It's super simple. It uses just Google Spreadsheet and my Gmail. And a short demo. So for each study, I generate a list of participants who fit the criteria, and I can decide who I want to contact based on these criteria. So I run the scenario, and I can see who has received the email, so I don't annoy these people again and again. And when I run an automation, only those people who I wanted to contact, they receive an email with customized information relevant only for them and for that study. Okay, I mentioned customized emails, and that's why is this simple automation super powerful, because it not only automatically sends emails to who I decide, but the email module is able to dynamically add values from the spreadsheet, such as name and plan and when the study is going on. And so these customized emails in Make help me to save hours, literally like hours of recruiting with crafted emails. And so when it comes to automations, the first lesson that Eva and I learned is that we have to break down our goals and processes into tiny baby steps if we want to automate them. And this can be challenging, as in UX, we are trained to storytell. So we are trained to abstract detailed data into easy to understand stories. But with Make, it is the opposite. We can experiment with our automation, but often the building process demands breaking it down into baby steps and with very, very detailed instructions. And we also need to know what is the next step.
And so this step-by-step thinking was a bridge for us for more complex automations and workflows. Make, as every other tech company nowadays, is exploring how to use AI internally. Every team is very much encouraged to use AI in their day-to-day jobs. And so Misha and I started to experiment how we could use AI in the research process, specifically this part, to improve the visibility, to improve the storytelling and the data analysis. So I thought about this use case, and let me give you more context. So originally what we did is that we shared the results with the company only after the study is finished, which was very rare. It was like once in 2 to 3 months. And meanwhile, the rest of the organization doesn't know what we are doing. So I had this idea that we could share a short story, short summary of each customer interview after we are done with the interview. And this would increase the visibility of our team, and we would share the results more frequently, and it would also improve the cross-team collaborations because the stakeholders would know what we work on real time, and if they work on something similar, we can collaborate and they can reach out to us. But the thing is that I don't like writing summary, and there is never enough time for that, and it's hard to prioritize. So I thought that I could use AI for that, and I could integrate it to Make so the whole process is much more smooth and seamless. So I created this automation. It was very, very simple at the beginning. It just takes the notes of the user interview, which I had in the Google spreadsheet, and it gives it to AI. AI creates a summary and sends it to me on Slack. And Now, the thing about notes is that you need to actually write them down and take them. And if you ever run a customer interview, you can imagine that taking the notes and moderating the session together at the same time, it's very challenging. It's hard to focus on two things. And so what I did was that I often asked other colleagues to join me so they can help me to take notes. But people are just busy, and sometimes no one could help me with that. Or they don't do the notes very well. Like they miss often the important part. So I was thinking that I could improve this automation by instead of giving it notes, which I took, giving it a Zoom transcript, which at this point I had in the Google Docs. And I just wanted to compare the results, and surprisingly, it worked quite well. The quality was very, very similar. I just need to tweak some little pieces, for example, names, and it was very, very minor changes. But at this point, I had the transcript in the Google Docs, and I had to manually copy it to the Google Docs from Zoom. So I wanted to get rid of this manual step. And so I iterated on the automation, and now I have this scenario which can load the notes automatically from Zoom immediately after the meeting and send me a summary. And so if I show you this scenario at first, it may look really complex, but remember how I got there. It was the baby steps. And when I started to work on this simple scenario, I started to get new ideas how it could be improved and how I can iterate on it. And I believe it's just about trying out new stuff, trying out these new tools. Don't be scared, and the ideas will come naturally. And so this is how the result looks like. Now, after each customer interview, I get a Slack message to myself. It's structured in a way that I want it, and it all happens in the background. And this automation that I just shared, it could be used for any meeting that you need notes from. And you can specify any format of the notes in your prompt. And the quality of the result depends on the quality of the prompt. So this is not new, you probably heard this many times, but I want to share a couple of examples of what worked well for me. So this was my prompt. You don't need to read it all, but I will highlight some rules that I followed and were working well. So first, I provided very detailed context. I said that what is MEG? MEG is a no-code platform, that the interview was about dashboards, and that the notes are in the format of the Zoom transcript. Then I gave it very specific instructions about the outcome. So I said that I want there the first name of a customer and the plan. That I want it to have these 4 topics, each of them with the bullet points. And that I want to have each topic numbered as a numbered point and surrounded with the asterisk so it's bold. And it's also good to provide some examples. So in this case, I just said it that I want here this specific sentence, and I got it on each result. And so that's it. Misha will walk you through another use case now.
Yeah, so another use case where we are currently experimenting with AI is analyzing qualitative data from surveys. So this is what researchers often do as well. So this is useful for anyone who needs to analyze a large amount of structured qualitative data and weight. In this use case, I wanted to, can you go back? I wanted to analyze qualitative responses from surveys. I wanted to create categories of this free text and automatically assign it back to the original text. Okay, and so this is how typically qualitative feedback looks like in surveys. So it's structured, typically it's an Excel, and you're getting a lot of text. And getting qualitative feedback from surveys is awesome. It's awesome because you receive responses directly from users in their own words. You have a lot of data, and so you can measure how many users feel that way. But what you have to do, you typically, this is the analytical process, so you typically read every response one by one, and you try to find common themes that users describe, and then you try to assign an easy-to-read label to it, a category. So for example, easy to use or saving time. And why? Because that allows you to count how frequent is the theme and measure it statistically. So you can create this beautiful graph for the stakeholders. But what's not awesome about this process is the coding, because it's very often manual, and it's awfully time-consuming if you have 2,000 responses, for example. And so I wanted to create an automation which creates these codes, categories automatically, and also it assigns them automatically to the original text data. And so my idea was very, very simple. I was thinking I will find the question, which is a column in the spreadsheet with the answers, and I will tell AI what I want to do, and in this case that, hey, create categories, and if I approve them, assign them to the column next to the original responses. So that was my idea. So I created a scenario, I ran it, and this is what I got. So the scenario was functioning, but it didn't give me the results I expected. First, I got an analysis that was not correct. For example, I asked AI to write 3 examples from the original data, but the quotes were made up. I couldn't find them in the original responses. And the second problem was that what I received was very unstructured analysis, and for me it was very difficult to tell Make, hey, I selected these categories, they make sense, I approve them, go back and assign them to the original text. So I had to do still a lot of manual copy and pasting, still time consuming. And so what did I do? Baby steps. So first, I broke this automation, what I wanted to do, this use case, into 2 separate automations. So you see only the first part. This first part covers creating the categories from the responses, and it has 2 AI prompts that run at the same time. So this is the first prompt, and it gives me results that are reliable. And why? Because I simplified that. So I ask AI, hey, give me 15 categories that represent the most frequent responses, and a description for each category. So with 3 examples, so I am able to understand how you got it, how you got these categories, and I can validate and verify them. So that's enough for me to understand how the categories were made up. This is the second prompt in that first scenario when Make is creating categories for me, suggesting categories for me. So the second AI module uses JSON because I need to transfer that unstructured text that you saw on the previous slide into a nice table that it's easy for me just to approve and tell Make which categories he needs to work. And so when I have it, and once I approve the categories, I can run the second scenario, and this scenario is only for assigning approved categories back to the original data in a separate column. And so coding takes a couple of minutes, not days for me, and this is amazing how much time it saves me. And so just to show you an example of the results, so what I get is something that I can actually trust. The results are reliable. There is still a lot of things to improve, but it's a good start. And so, for example, you can see that I approved the categories such as ease of use, integrations, and so on. And you see how these categories are linked to the original responses. And if the scenario sees, reads a response that he doesn't have a relevant category that makes sense to assign it to, it gives me a response, no label can be assigned. For me, it's a sign that AI gives me a response or analysis that I can work with. Okay, so as Eva said, the quality of the results depends on the quality of the prompt. And so this is my first prompt that I used, and it gave me false results. And the reason is because I put too many tasks into it. I asked for too much I didn't provide it enough context. I didn't provide it enough relevant data. And AI is trained to give you responses, so it made it up. It's a pleaser. It wanted to please me. And so instead of that, baby steps, I broke that previous prompt into 2 different prompts. One for creating the codes, second for assigning the categories. And in that way, I was able to control and verify the analysis. So the second lesson that Eva and I learned when we started to do these automations is that AI is a fast learner, but not a pro. You are. You know the data best. If you talk to the customers, you know the context, you know how they feel when you talk to them, you know everything about their stories. And so we treat AI as an intern that is eager to give us responses, but often doesn't have enough context and experience, and it's not reliable. So what we have to do, we are training ourselves in prompting. And so we review and iterate each steps so we can control the outputs, because the output is only as good as your prompt.
Okay, I have one last use case to share with you. I was working on this project that I wanted to create user personas for a specific segment of Make users, and I spoke to several stakeholders. I got notes from 10 interviews, and I wanted to try AI, how it would tackle this complex strategic task for me. So I got 2 scenarios for that, 2 automations. One was creating summary from the Zoom transcript. It was very similar to the one that I shared previously. So I had the Zoom transcript in the Google Doc, and I wanted, it was creating a summary, and it was adding it to a separate Google document. So at the end, the outcome was the summaries of all the interviews in one document. This one worked pretty well. The summaries were pretty good. The quality was good. And when I was done with the interviews, I had another automation, and the task was to create the user personas from those summarized notes and send it to me on Slack. But it was hallucinating a lot. Like, it was making things up, and it didn't give me, it gave me information that was never mentioned on the interviews. And also, it didn't look at the data from the high-level point of view. So, for example, it never mentioned that the personas are different for different business sizes, and that was one of the key insights that I discovered. And even when I specified that in the prompt, because I knew the data, it didn't got it right. So I think it missed the broader context, because I gave it data from the interviews, but it doesn't know our product that well as we do. It doesn't know the company terminology, etc. So it's just not enough context for it. And there were some parts which were fine, but it wasn't enough. And at this point, it was much easier for me to do the analysis by myself. So what I want to say is that from my experience, AI is not able to do those complex strategic tasks yet. But it's important to test it and try it out, but in those areas where it makes sense, and be aware of those areas where it makes sense to use it. So to wrap it up, As UX professionals, I believe we cannot escape technology. We use it in our day-to-day job, and at the same time, we contribute building the digital tools. And we have two choices. We can either be scared and reject it, or we can embrace it. We have to be aware of its potential, but also the limitations. And the best way to try it is to be curious about it, to try things out, test it, play with it, keep going. And so for Misha and myself, as non-technical people, cracking the code was not about learning how to code, but learning how to work with these new technologies. And we believe they will not replace us as the professionals. I think they are opening new possibilities, and for sure they will redefine the skill set and our roles. And now Misha and myself, thanks to these new tools that we use, we have more time for fun and creative parts of our job, and we can focus on the things that we love. So that's it. Thank you. You can try it yourself. This is the link to a Notion page where you can download all those automations that we shared with you. You can import them to Make and try it. If you do that, let us know. We are really curious to hear how it went. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Michaela and Eva. Right now we have some time to ask a couple of questions. So, anybody? Do we have any questions? Okay, here's one.
Hello, thank you very much for this talk. It was really interesting and useful for me. And I have a question regarding the Zoom transcription, because I had experience when I was interviewing people from UK and Irish people, and they have a huge accent. And at first interviews, I even couldn't understand some basic words, you know, because that was very specific. So have you ever faced such experience? How Zoom transcription works with that? Is it possible or not?
I don't have experience with that, actually. Yeah, the people I talked to didn't have such strong accents, so the results were pretty good.
I do have experience with that, but it was in my previous jobs and at the beginning when I started working at Make, and I didn't have a scenario yet, or I wasn't using scenarios, so I was going back, listening to it again, looking at the transcripts and really trying to understand what they were saying. But you gave me an idea. Maybe I will create a scenario, and if I do, I'll share it with you.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions? Okay.
Thanks for the interesting presentation. I also worked on automation as a developer. I have seen in one of your processes that you send the output to a DALI, and I was interested what the image generation is doing in one of your processes when you are mostly focused on text generation, probably like a summaries of discussions. Or maybe I have seen it incorrectly, and there wasn't a DALI, but I'm pretty sure there was.
We didn't use DALI in our automations. We used the text generation, but I believe Make has a DALI module. So if you want to try it out, it should be possible, because Make can connect over 1,600 apps, and I believe DALI is one of them.
Okay, okay. I thought this is for visual thinkers, that some people may want to have some kind of visualization after the conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great use case. Thank you.